Welcome to Between Whiskey and Pneumonia. I'm Drew Shapiro, joined by my co-host Nick Hatt, and today we have Jay Clothier on the show. Thanks for coming down, Jay.
Appreciate the invite. Good to be here.
Right on, appreciate it. Jay's a defense attorney, primarily in Genesee County, and again, thanks for coming on the show. I thought I should probably start with the story of how we first met. I think I was a newly elected county commissioner, and the prosecutor was giving me a tour of the courthouse, and you happened to be there, and I think you might have had police caution tape as your necktie that day or something like that.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I was like, I got to get to know this guy.
Yeah, I remember. It was right down there at the district court, right at the corner with you with David Layton.
Yep. So I'm happy to have you on the show. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself. I'd love to hear that story about your law school commencement, just so everyone else can get a little flavor for your personality.
Well, thank you. What was it? Tell me something about myself. I'm a practicing lawyer in the Mott Foundation building in Flint, Michigan. I practice there with several good friends and my younger brother. I was born in Lapeer, raised by my folks, which were both educators, and attended Flint public schools. Graduated in 1986. It seems weird saying that because you walk into a pub or a bar now and it says you have to be this date, and you tell people, "Hey, I graduated. I wasn't even born yet." So I graduated in '86, and I then went on to Ann Arbor and studied political science, Chinese and Russian history of all things, and then I went out and you were talking about the tie. With the last name Clothier, when I, after I graduated, I went and worked out in Washington for Congressman Kildee for a bit, and then I started trying to get in the real world and interviewed around, and with the last name Clothier, many retailers wanted to. So I interviewed with every Strawbridge and Clothier May Company, Kaufman's in Pittsburgh. Ultimately, signed on and worked for Dayton Hudson's for 10 years. As a clothier, I feel like I have a civic responsibility to be fashion forward and push the envelope. And during that time, there was declining membership in the UAW, and they were organizing retail stores. So I ended up working through a number of labor drives for Dayton Hudson's, and worked closely with the consulting group out of St. Louis. And I always had an inkling because my uncle, Tom Butterfield in Lapeer, late uncle, I always liked what he did, and he was inspirational, and I always wanted to go to law school. So ultimately, while working for Hudson's, I got promoted there, but I worked 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. unloading trucks in the morning. Then I'd jump into a suit at 10 o'clock and be the acting store manager till my boss arrived. 6 o'clock, I would jump into civvies and fly down the lodge, or about 5 o'clock, I would jump into civvies and drive down to the lodge, go to Wayne State Law School. I got accepted there in 95 and enrolled in their night school program. They didn't have checks and balances at the time, so I dual enrolled in the AM, the day program, and the night program. They recommend 12 credits. I carried about 16 to 18 credits per term while working 60 hours a week.
Wow.
So my life sucked for the late 90s. Ultimately graduated in 1998, and I'll segue to that story I told you. I don't know, Nick, if you remember, 1997, the Wings won their ended the Stanley Cup drought.
Yep, I remember that.
1998, they were on their way to their second Stanley Cup, and my mother and father, my father recently passed, but they have a timeshare in Key West. They'd been to my high school graduation, they'd been to my undergrad graduation, and they're like, "Is it okay if we stay in Key West and don't come to your law school?" I'm like, that's fine. So I ended up enjoying some adult beverages with some friends, and I'm kind of got a good sense of humor, as Drew alluded to, and at least I think so. Most of the most of the disharmony that I have in life is my perception of my sense of humor versus others versus reality.
Right.
And anywho, I was fortunate. The first female attorney general, fresh off of Waco, was Janet Reno, and she was my commencement speaker at the Masonic Temple. And I don't know if you've been to the Masonic. There's 5,000 to 8,000 people there. The Wings are playing the blues at the Kiel Center. My mom and dad aren't there. I had a few pops, and I flipped my card over and write Sergei Fedorov with a phonetic spelling. And the Masonic Temple goes nuts. And at that point, Janet Reno, the Attorney General, thought I was somebody pretty important, and she came up and, congratulations, Sergei. So So technically, I don't know that I'm a lawyer. I don't know if I graduated.
That's phenomenal. So she actually read that off the card.
No. There was like a Don Pardo guy on the side that you handed it at the lectern, and they announced your name. But when everybody started going nuts, she walked up and said, "Congratulations, Sergey." I was like, duh.
God. But, you know, I was pretty young at the time, so the only real recollection of Janet Reno I have is Will Ferrell playing Janet Reno.
He does. That's awesome. I love that.
So the mental image there of, you know, Will Ferrell walking up and telling you congratulations.
Yeah, I suppose in retrospect, as a young man, I probably should have respected the sanctity of the moment a little bit more and got a photo op of it. So, I mean, I don't have a picture of it, but when I took the bar about 3 months later at Breslin, there were people that were so, you know, uptight lawyers going to take the biggest test of their life, and all of a sudden people saw me and they're like, "You're that Sergey dude."
That's incredible. I think my college graduation, I know we're both huge Michigan fans. I went to the other university in Michigan, Central Michigan University.
So did I. My best friends were all at 105 Emmons, and I was on an intramural soccer team in Mount Pleasant.
No kidding. I was on Locust, University in Locust, so right downtown, just a couple blocks from the Bird, you know, some old stomping grounds there. But yeah, I can relate to graduation. I think I had a bottle of Blue Hawaiian Boone's Farm before walking. But
Well, I will state for the record, I did attend, I don't even know if you remember if they were around. I mean, I think you're younger than me. The end of the world parties they had up there. Did you ever go to any of those?
I heard tale of them.
I attended 2 and walked away misdemeanor and felony free.
That's impressive. I know Main Street used to get pretty lively back in the day, especially the fraternity houses down there, and it was a good
Spent
time.
some time in the Dam and Wayside.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know how some of these places have survived this long, right? But in all seriousness, what made you want to get into practicing law?
I indicated my uncle. He had his law firm still is in existence in Lapeer on Clay Street, right next to the courthouse. And, my aunt and uncle were my parents' best friends. It was my dad's sister, and he was always inspirational. But I took a little hiatus because my parents were both educators. You know, my dad was an administrator in the Flint schools. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. And they had 3 of us in Ann Arbor simultaneously, my older sister, my younger brother, and I. And so my sister and I, took a job out in D.C., and I thought I might want to get into politics and work out there. So I lived with her for a year and worked out there. But I always wanted to go to law school, but I wasn't one of those trust fund kids that could immediately go from undergrad to law school. And I mean, back in the day, they didn't have gap years, and your parents said, "Hey, let's go earn a living." I mean, I don't know if Nick, if that was your experience, but nowadays, my kids are like, "I think I'm going to take a gap year."
Yeah, right. What is that?
So, what types of cases are you typically working on?
What I find is the most rewarding is helping out friends. And helping out friends of friends. We spoke off record, and I can't talk about particular things.
Right. He says thank you.
You're welcome. But, I mean, that's most rewarding is when you can tap into. I mean, I'm sure it transcends any industry that you're in. If you have, I mean, like financial, when you have a particularized knowledge, it doesn't mean you're smarter than anybody. You just know more about a subset of the overall picture. And when I can help somebody navigate the court system that screwed up once or got screwed over, or a young person that made a mistake, those are what I find to be the most rewarding cases where I think at least this guy, I'm naive enough to think that I can make a difference in people's lives, and I try every day to try to do that. And so that's what I generally do. Is the flip side is the worst case scenario is representing somebody that's been to prison 9 times, that knows the Michigan Department of Corrections better than anybody. He's an expert, if I could call him, as a witness, and he wants to tell me how to do it. So generally what I do is majority of my business is criminal defense. However, I did work for 2 family court judges, so I do have a working knowledge of family court issues. And when you get somebody that's being bullied, pushed around, or has a paternity or custody or parenting time issue, I do a handful of those. And then there's other particularized, like, for example, anybody that's licensed through the state of Michigan, nurses, doctors, lawyers, I characterize it as administrative law. People that have messed up once in the rearing of their children, they get put on a statewide registry, or somebody that doesn't change bandages and has a nursing license, and and there's somebody that makes a complaint and gets their license. I do a handful of administrative law things. I'm pretty good at those. Did I answer it, or was it a long-winded? Will you answer my question? Answer the question. Non-responsive.
Long-winded is great.
Sorry.
No, I can definitely relate to that, working in finance, and so often it's difficult. You try to help people, and sometimes people are their own worst enemies. I think I really gained some perspective in my career. I've been doing this almost 16 years now, but just paid my first death claim on a life insurance policy last year. And it's things like that, these pivotal moments that seem to impact our lives. And I think that goes for everybody. And I know that sometimes it gets tiring. I'm sure, you're always upbeat and super positive and energetic when I see you, but how do you deal with seeing people on, or trying to help people on what is likely one of the most difficult or one of the worst days of their lives?
Well, I was driving down US 23 to come here today. I was trying to anticipate what kind of questions you guys are going to ask. And I thought that that would be something that, basically, how do you do what you do? There's a inside every suit and every lawyer is a human being. And it's very, very difficult at times. Like you said, I'm a pretty upbeat guy. I've got a family. I've got a wife. I've got a nice house. I've got dogs. But when I'm not in court and I have appointments, my secretary, Kylie, I should give her a shout out, does a lot of my scheduling. And when you have every half hour to 45 minutes for an 8-hour period, everybody just coming in and telling you that a lot of terrible things are happening to them, or they're fearful of this, and you hear it's difficult to not bring that home on occasion.
For sure.
So it's always good to have a little bit of a commute. Did I answer that, or did I dodge it?
No, you did good.
Yeah, no, that's the most challenging thing, is hearing us. And like you said about doing finance and such, I guess it's perspective and gaining and keeping perspective. I'm passionate and I care and I'm a human being. You got to kind of check yourself, and I'm sure you can relate, and you can relate in what you do. If you care about something more than they do, then it's a losing proposition.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I see it all the time. You've got people that some might view as, the ideal client because they've got a brand new car, brand new boats, country club membership, and some of these people aren't willing to nut up $50 a month to buy some term life insurance, in case something happens to them. And, yeah, I think a lot of times people just don't even understand that, hey, I'm not chasing you for, making a couple $100 on this. I'm trying to get you to do the right thing, protect your family, and just sometimes it just doesn't work.
Well, I always qualify much of my conversation with my clients. I mean, if you were to talk to me, either one of you in my office, I implore people, just let me do what I do. Let me give you the relative pros and cons. And if you want, let me just give you what I think is all the relative pros and cons. And if you want to disregard it and do whatever the hell you want to after that, that's fine with me. But let me do my job first. Many times when I'm meeting with clients, I explain to them that what I think I should be doing is kind of like a game show host. I can present what's behind door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, and I think what separates good lawyers from great lawyers is having more doors or curtains to pick from. And then as a fallback, you can always trade it all for a lifetime supply of turtle wax.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that relates to my industry as well, too. And everyone likes to think they can predict what the market's going to do. In reality, no one has a crystal ball. No one can tell you exactly what it's going to do. Anybody who says they can, I think, is usually pretty full of shit. So usually, same thing. I'm trying to present different options to my clients and make sure that we can succeed regardless of what's taking place. And if you play poker, you want to make sure you have as many outs as possible.
I'm sure your most frustrating thing in your business is the same thing. It transcends industry, is when you get somebody that doesn't appreciate your expertise and, well, I read something on the internet, or, I see this app for day trading.
Right. The best is sometimes I'll get a call or a message saying, hey, can you help me with my Robinhood account with my investment selections on here? And it's like, well, no, because I have a fiduciary responsibility. I can't give you advice on things I don't know about without getting all the proper information first. And
I get that all the time. Like, for example, when I'm on my time, I do mindless stuff, Twitter or whatever, Facebook, watch old TV shows or whatever. I hate getting instant messages. Can I ask you a quick question? You just did.
Right. That was your one question.
Well, because people that DM you or ask you questions like that, it's like you have a fiduciary. I have fiduciary duties, and I don't like practicing law over internet and knowing where the audience is. And most of the questions they're asking are complex, and it's not quick. And
right.
I usually in that case, on my time, and you got to have boundaries. And if you want to talk to me about something of that nature, here's my office number or my email. Contact me during regular business time, because can I ask you a quick question? Then I learned it the hard way. You answer a quick question. And then next thing you know, there's about 5 different hypotheticals and follow-up questions, and you're sitting there, and next thing you know, you're getting complained about by, how come you're working, Dad?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You ever get a client that you turn away?
Yeah.
Just come in with some crazy shit, and you're like, no.
Yeah, when people come in to meet with me, the way I characterize it, and if either one of you were to come into my office, what I would do is tell people, this is a lot like speed dating. It's whether or not your foot fits in this glass slipper or vice versa.
Right.
You got to feel comfortable with who's at the lectern and the podium, and I will. What I try to do, ironically, most of law school centers on it's mnemonics and Iraq, issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion. And so that's kind of the way that I was trained, and that's the way that it's been bred into me or trained into me. And so when I'm talking to people, I'm trying to figure out how many issues usually, and then I'm trying to figure out how much animosity or with the victims or with the case.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out whether there are multiple cases. And then I want to make sure it's a good match between whoever's meeting with me and them, and I'm sure a lot of people come in and meet with me and they don't like what they're stepping in, and I tell them that's fine. But there's other people that I meet with that I think aren't going to listen to me, that a type of case I might not like.
Right.
I won a case that a man perped on his children purportedly, and won. And the victims looked like my children, and that was probably one of the things I struggled with and still do to this day.
Yeah, that would be tough. But on the flip side of that, when I was in high school, law shows were the rage. You had Boston Legal and
I love watching
the
that.
Practice.
I love James Spader,
a few good men, and
William Shatner.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, you ever get any cases like that where somebody walks through the door and it's a constitutional issue, or and you just get fired up?
Yep. Actually, you watch those shows and it's dramatized and certain things, but I think anybody that practiced law has had a few good men moment.
Right.
They've got Colonel Jessup. In fact, I when I talk to clients, I cite to sometimes when I'm working my tail off on a case and I don't think I'm being appreciated by my clients. Sometimes I'll look at them point blank and in my best Jack Nicholson go, rather than question the very criminal defense I provide, I'd rather you just said thank you.
right. No, that's good.
But yeah, no, I do get jacked up. Like, sometimes when, when you're younger in particular, everybody thinks they're going to save the world, and, they want to take cases that are these giant cases and, and make law. And, when you spend 3 weeks in trial and all of your other clients are irritated at you for that period of time, you better make sure that you are compensated for doing so. And sometimes principles and some of those are not the best business decision at certain times. But yeah, when they're, the best thing you can do, sometimes with COVID, a lot of people, you have an absolute right to go to trial.
Right.
But with COVID and all of the restrictions, they have not, or there was a long period of time where you were not having trial dates, and justice delayed many times is justice denied. And so that has been kind of a challenge, is because some cases you cannot, as much as you'd like to try to resolve them and negotiate or work it out with the prosecutor, or try to come up with something that both of you can stomach and the victims can stomach or something. Sometimes there's just the need for trials, and because of the environment they were not happening, and so that caused a lot of frustration.
Right, the right to a speedy trial, and I've noticed that over just reading things. A lot of the higher profile cases seem like they drag on forever. And what's your opinion for that? Like the guy over there in Swartz Creek that killed the one kid, hasn't went to trial yet, and it's been almost 2 years.
Well, there was about 18 months where you couldn't.
Well, right. Well,
pandemic
even.
Well, yeah.
It seemed like it'd take forever. You're going to let a guy sit in a county jail for a year waiting to go to trial? What the fuck's speedy about that?
Part of the problem is the judges that are there. They have they've got to answer to the county, they've got to answer to the state level, and sometimes federal. I'm not making excuses for them, but it's a process as things are right now. Basically, the first step of the process. Do you ever play baseball? Basically, I use baseball metaphors all the time. The first base is the arraignment. Then you have several pretrials, and most of the big cases like you're talking about start off at the district court. For all the preliminary matters and probable cause kind of cases. And then, there's usually about a month delay in when it's bound over, getting the physical file from one courthouse to another courthouse. And then they start generating dates, and you can't just, as soon as you get the file, due process dictates that you get, much of it actually centers on notice requirements and due process and giving people time.
Right.
Many times that cases are delayed, usually. Yeah, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. There are some times where, let's say, for example, if you watch CSI or something, maybe there's a DNA issue and the prosecutor sends something to the Bridgeport lab. Well, if they're not able to go to work and they're isolating it, then there's a delay in the production of any reports or analyzing any of the labs. So occasionally that'll happen, or sometimes the prosecutor will run everything, and there will be delays in handling stuff through the lab, and then the defense wants to have their own experts, and there's delays associated with that occasionally.
Are there some specific issues that get you fired up? I know from my brief detour into politics, there's a couple things that always really bothered me. One of them being civil asset forfeiture, some of the mandatory minimums that are required, and at this point in time, people still in jail and in prison for marijuana charges when you've got a dispensary on every corner and people making millions of dollars. I mean, those are just some of the ones that personally get me going.
Yeah, I mean, the law is a living, breathing thing. So, I think the state of Michigan kind of done a decent thing. They've most of the possession of marijuana charges, I think they went and I believe they went through and purged many of those on their own volition without having to have people hire lawyers and fix it because they changed the law. To answer your question, yes, there's things that, the whole Johnson Clear, the whole Johnson. I mean, yeah, I think it's crap that people were incarcerated and then, all of a sudden morals and tolerance and things change. And you stop to think about how many fines and costs were taken from people for those charges, how many people were on probation for, like you said, though, looking at the markets and crystal ball, hindsight, it's hard to fix it. But I think there's been a lot of reform as of late. There's still a lot more that needs to. My biggest beef that I fight a lot about, it's not even a criminal thing. It's DHS and CPS cases. I mean,
I can imagine. Yeah.
I said I did a handful of. There was a period of time when I was a very young man that, I'm cocky and brash, and I've told when I meet with clients, I'm like, yeah, I'm cocky. If I don't believe in me, why the should you?
Right. Yeah.
But there was a time when I felt I was the best around at doing child protective proceedings, and there were people around the county when I was a younger man that had won 5 or 6 cases in their career, and then I went on a streak and won about 10 straight. I do have some fundamental issues and problems with the circumstances with CPS. You usually will have young people that attend Michigan or Central that dedicate themselves to social work, and they come at 22 years of age and get a job with Department of Human Services. They give them a CPS job. They don't really have any lifetime experience, and they're in the north end of Flint going in houses telling a single mother with 3 kids that doesn't, that's on food stamps, that's not getting regular child support, how to parent. I think there's some fundamental issue, and then there's also demographics and race that are sometime of issue, and life experiences. The same CPS caseworker that has a BA in social work does a 1-week training, and if she determines probable cause, or he between her ears, your name goes on a statewide registry. I think there's something fundamentally flawed on that, in a due process violation. I mean, when you were asking me particular, that's one of the things that really bothers me. You can have a caseworker determined by preponderance of evidence, much of which of the evidence is inadmissible or not in accordance with court rules because the person doesn't know them. And then you go on it without any recourse. You go on a statewide registry that says you hurt kids, that could affect you. Any time that you have any licensing issue, and they make that those are the things that I think are most troubling to me.
Yeah, where's the due process in that?
I mean, it's one thing if a person comes in and say, yeah, I spanked my kid and I left a mark, and then put them on a registry, but it smacks of labels and McCarthyism and bearing a scarlet letter, and I don't think it's very fair.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think I'm drawing a parallel between that and the Department of Homeland Security. These FBI agents being able to write their own search warrants, under the the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
And that's some bullshit, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can swear, but
Yes, we can.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Especially when it comes to the government overreach.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
no, I mean, the big
Bullshit.
issues that I have
lot
are
of it.
Fourth Amendment issues.
Right.
You know, that's basically
You're right. Leave me
you
alone.
I mean, and the Fourth Amendment's what's at a lot of discussion right now. But yeah, as far as balancing the individuals versus the government interests, you know, in the same token, I was talking about those CPS cases. You get a whiff of allegations, and you know they can grab the cops and kick in your door and check on the welfare of your kids. And I think that's a Fourth Amendment infringement, in particular, because you got people that will make false complaints to gain a custodial advantage or something like that. And there's laws on the books that says the false report of a CPS complaint is a misdemeanor. To my knowledge, that's on the books, and to my knowledge, no one's been charged with that.
How is that possible?
Because it potentially creates a chilling effect and stifles people from making, they want the complaints to come in so they can protect children, but
They want the
when you
complaints.
have somebody that's chronically doing it, the law's on the book that a false complaint of a child protector, and I don't know of anybody being charged with that.
Now, is that a false complaint for the actual CPS or DHS worker, or is that for the individual who
The individual that makes it.
the individual that makes them? They should charge. There's probably a lot of those that should happen.
I think so. But yeah, like you said, the things I get real passionate. You know, I don't like when people are yanked around. Before we started, I gave you guys, you know, I have little glow in the dark wristbands relative to the big issues. The big issues that are there are, you know, the Fourth Amendment, which is your right to be free from and it's also search and seizure issues, and it's also what's in play right now in all these protests and signatures relative to Roe v. Wade and the Fourth Amendment, because the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness stems from the Fourth Amendment, which the right to rear your children and make reproductive usually stems from that. So there's a lot of our conversation on the Fourth Amendment right now. And obviously, with the First Amendment, I mean, Jesus, what did I see on the news the other day? People that went to school board meetings that made an argument were put on FBI terror watch list. I mean, that's just insane overreach. You know, I went down to a concert. I went to Gandy Dancer last night in Ann Arbor, I told you. And I went to Michigan Theater, and there was a line to get in. There were 10 people out there with clipboards for a myriad of issues, wanting you to sign something regarding the Supreme Court memo. And I'm like, why? They were getting paid $25 an hour to stand there, probably by a Soros type.
Oh, yeah.
Right, maybe. Now, I'm curious to your opinion on that memo. To me, you know, these people running around with their heads on fire are fucking ignorant, because even if they do overturn it, it becomes a state issue, right? 10th Amendment.
Yeah.
Right?
What's up? Yeah.
I mean, nothing's going to change. I don't see anything changing.
Well, I think it's gaslighting, in my own personal opinion. It has nothing to do with my professional. I think it's gaslighting. I think they were looking at the polls. I'm an independent. I think people were looking at the polls, looking at the performance of our president, and realized they needed to gaslight something. And because they were going to get their ass kicked in the next coming election, and 55% of the populace are women, and voters are women, and that is the issue that's principal. And so I'm not sure what took place. I as a lawyer, as a former law clerk, I'm deeply troubled by the release of it in the first place, because it's work product, it's privileged, and that whoever leaked it should be prosecuted and made an example of, because I think, I mean, look at all the protests and strike, and it was a memo, a draft. My own personal thing, to your point, the argument is whether or not a woman's right to choose should be a constitutional amendment, or, you know, and a lot of people are of the opinion, we didn't have that technology. You know, it's basically for the founding fathers way back when. What did they come up with, and what were they thinking? And then the counter argument is, yeah, it's fathers. It was all dudes back in the day. You know, I mean, I can see the other sides of the argument, but to your point, basically they're just saying, look, we should defer to the states and let the states decide things, you know, rather than have the individual states. The problem is, we're part. I mean, it goes way back to the hallmarks of being a part of a union and federalism, and you know, you can't. You can't. That'd be. I mean, the nation would be kind of like, look at it like Michigan. Like you have a different set of laws between Livingston, Genesee, and Oakland County. I mean, you got to have some semblance of order. So those are the two arguments as I see it. I mean, I think that you can disagree with Roe versus Wade and still support a woman's right to choose. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You know, I mean, based on the legal arguments. I mean, I think you can disagree with and agree with what the Supreme Court's arguing about right now, that leaked memo. I think you can agree with that premise and still support of a woman's right to reproductive. It just, like you said, handle it on the state level.
I think a lot of the problem is the Supreme Court. Most people are confused. The Supreme Court doesn't make laws anyway. You know, the Supreme Court made gay marriage legal. They're going to outlaw abortion. The Supreme Court doesn't do that. They offer an opinion. I think everybody needs to change focus from the Supreme Court. Focus on your state.
Yeah, generally,
read the fucking Constitution.
What generally happens is Lansing in Washington, basically what happens is they write laws. You know, there's distinct branches. There's a legislative branch that creates laws, and then the judicial interprets whatever they write. The problem is in Lansing and Washington, you have people that are writing laws that are not good practicing lawyers, and they write, you know, and you know, I remember when I was in law school and I was in a contracts class, and basically what they say is, you know, what ends up happening is you have a statute, at law, and then your common law is all these different courts that go back and forth trying to decide what the law is. And you got one area that will, you know, a liberal area that'll decide this way, a conservative, and ultimately then you take it up to the Court of Appeals and then the Supreme Court. And, you know, the Supreme Court would be, like in Michigan, would be the highest law in Michigan. And then you have the other recourse, which would be the U.S. Supreme Court if you wanted to appeal a Michigan ruling. What happens is I remember being in, they would have you in law school read these cases, and it would be common law opinions. They'd be interpreting the precedent of another case, interpreting another case, and they would all swing this way, and then it would get interpreted, and then it would swing back the other way. And I remember saying to my professor, Dolan, in contracts, I'm like, you know, it's like a pendulum swinging back and forth. You know, what is the red letter law? And he looked at me and he goes, you might hate it as a student, but as a practitioner, you'll love it. The ambiguity and the arguments. But I don't know if I made my point.
No, I think you did. And I think this goes industry-wide, too. You know, there's a lot that separates good from great when it comes to finance, when it comes to practicing law. And, you know, a lot of times I really feel like it gets oversaturated. And you have people out there, for example, the one that gets me is the Dave Ramsey, quote unquote, financial coaches, who are unlicensed people, typically charging for appointments and giving advice, but because they're not licensed, they don't get held to the same standard, right? So if I give bad advice, I can get sued.
Mm-hmm.
Or
grieved.
Yeah. If a Dave Ramsey financial coach who's not licensed gives terrible advice.
Well, you know, in my industry, get this. You might appreciate this. If you're charged with a crime, the first step I told you is an arraignment. The courts sell the list of all of their arraignments, and lawyers can buy them. And some lawyers buy the list and then send mailings. Can you imagine being down in Dort Highway and pick up a prostitute that you didn't want anybody to know about, and some jackass lawyer sends a letter home to your wife saying, "Hey, do you want to represent me on that prostitution case?"
Wow.
I think that's grievable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you probably agree that it is oversaturated, just like many other industries. And, you know, have you seen, I'm sure you have, points in time where maybe somebody else was working with a different attorney and came to you and things could have been done differently, or
It's usually much more expensive if somebody fucked it up already.
Right. No doubt.
Yeah. However, I mean, I believe in karma, and I don't really. I mean, I do gimmicky shit with pens and and fluorescent wristbands and T-shirts. I just do that to be clever, in my opinion. I don't think I've ever had anybody come in my office and go, I was thinking about hiring you, and I saw this fluorescent wristband, or I was riding down the street and I saw some dude on the back of a motorcycle with "Take the Fifth, We'll Bring the Tonic" T-shirt. I've never ever had that happen, but I don't really, I mean, I do a little bit of gimmicky stuff like that I think is just fun, but I don't really advertise. And most of what I do is word of mouth. And, I really cherish helping my friends. And I believe in karma. And, unfortunately, if somebody came into my office and was really unhappy with their current counsel, what I would like, I try to do the golden rule. If that was my client, I would want a lawyer that I respected and liked to refer them back to me under the guise of customer service and give them an opportunity to remedy that. So generally, that's what I do. Like, say, for example, you were pissed off at whoever you had and you came in to meet with me. I would probably have a little back and forth, pros and cons. I'd let them know what I do the issue rule and think about it beforehand, but I'm not going to badmouth somebody else because the person that telling you may be wrong. They might, I'm meeting with them for 20 minutes. They might be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Right. They might be just, you never know what was going on, like Charlie Rich behind closed doors, with the lawyer and this person. And so, I mean, I learned this, after 25 years or 24 years of doing this, that there are more than two sides of the story, and, there's misperceptions. And so, I always tell people, schedule an appointment, ask your lawyer to walk through things and let them know that, because basically it's your money that's paying the lawyer and you are the boss. The lawyer's what I tell people, because I'm an athlete, is when you want to come here in my office and come up with the overall game plan, you can be the general manager and pick the personnel and the witnesses. You can be the coach and come up with the overall game plan. But when we're on the field, I want the rock and I want you to shut the fuck up and let me run with it.
Right.
You could come up with everything you want behind closed doors, but your job is to sit at the table, take notes, and look innocent. Maybe pick one juror out and stare at them.
Just stare at them. That's great.
No, that's great. So how many times have you seen the family friend thing backfire on somebody, where you might have an attorney who's great at drafting documents, doing estate planning, the types of attorneys I'm working with and partnering with most often, and they have a family friend or a child of a friend get caught up in something stupid at college.
It's like customer service, in my opinion. When it happens, it's like when I worked in retail. I hearken on my life experiences. When you get shitty service at a mall, you run around and bitch about it and complain about it, and you don't talk about all the times you get excellent service. Yes, I have seen that. I've seen it. I would think usually it happens with younger lawyers, inexperienced, because you learn lessons. Basically. I mean, I don't think anybody's trying to maliciously hurt people. I mean, maybe I'm naive. I mean, there's a handful of them. I see lawyers get prosecuted, but I'd like to think that majority of the people are well-intended and trying to help people. The problem that occurs is when you start trying, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know certain areas of law. And when I meet with people, like you were saying, do you take every case? No. Sometimes I become like a legal matchmaker, a legal Cupid, if you will. And I try to make sure that people that have an interest, that I hook them up with somebody that has the same values and work ethic and that I trust. And so there's a handful of people, I want everybody to call me about anything and everything, and then what I'll try to do is hook them up with somebody that I think does a good job. When you put your toe in the water of an area that you don't know, particularly in the criminal world, I mean, what you'll have sometimes is like a divorce lawyer that decides to help one of his clients on a drunk driving. I saw a guy in front of a very difficult judge commit malpractice on the record. He's at circuit court. His client's there for sentencing in front of one of the toughest sentencing judges, and the judge starts asking him questions, and the person has already pled guilty. You're at the last deal, the sentencing. The judge is getting ready to impose sentencing, and it's a very tough sentencer, and it's a she. You can probably do the math and figure it out. It's in Genesee County, and she's retired recently. So this guy's doing the sentencing, and the judge starts asking him questions, and he starts talking about trying to get a Cobb's, and she doesn't do Cobb's, which is a sentence deal, and you've already pled, so your leverage for getting anything like that's gone already. And then the judge says something about the police report, and he concedes on the record he never received the police report. And I'm like, what the fuck did your client plead guilty for? That's malpractice on the record right then and there. And that was a very, very, very high-profile divorce lawyer doing the case. So, yes, I've seen it. There are many, many, many times, though, most people that handle those family friend type things, if they've got a longtime lawyer, usually the family friend will call somebody like me, and then I will say, look, if you refer them to me, I'll discount it significantly. Or, if you need, and, I'll try to help the lawyer be successful. And I'm like, here's what you need to do. And there's many times the family friend is doing stuff. He's getting counsel of his relationships. I've got a couple interns this summer, the basketball players in Goodrich. And I tell them it's about relationship, because I will help like a civil lawyer that doesn't know what the hell they're doing and let them know, because I don't want to see somebody get screwed over. And if they're friends of mine, I want to try to help them out, because I might need to return the favor. I might have a bankruptcy question on a case that I'm handling, or a civil forfeiture issue that I need their expertise on, a discovery motion, or on something of that nature. So,
yeah, I think it's super important to recognize that there are specialties for a reason. It's like I'm not going to order a cheeseburger at a Chinese restaurant kind of thing.
Well, it's like, the other thing too is, people will call you out of the blue and go, "Oh, you're in financial planning. What do you think of this?" And they expect.
What do you think of Dogecoin?
Because I'm a lawyer, they expect me to know every civil code for every, Argentine townships ordinances or some shit.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, I'm licensed to do health insurance. I don't do health insurance. I refer that out to somebody, and hey, I can answer some general questions, but it's not what I do. And I think you can really get yourself in trouble real quick trying to hold yourself out as an expert in something you're not.
One of the things too, and it's funny. You're right. I used to get calls all the time of people that had civil disagreements with neighbors or debt collectors or somebody that owed them money. And, "Hey, Jay, can you help me? I just need you to write this quick letter, write a shitty letter to somebody." I don't do that, because if you write something on letterhead to anybody, the first thing that person's going to do is take it to their family friend or some other lawyer, and they'll go, "Why the fuck is he writing this letter? He's a criminal dude." He'll never sue you. I mean, it's as good as the paper. So I tell people, if you want somebody to write a letter, go to somebody that will back it up. So when that letter gets handed to somebody, to a friend, they'll know that they might get punched in the face in civil court.
Right, yeah,
I mean, you don't want. I mean, I told them I'll be happy to write a letter. I'll charge you to do it, but when they get it, they'll probably wipe their ass with it.
Speaking of wiping asses, you've alluded a couple times to being an athlete, and I know you have a story about winning the city championship, and it involves Jim Abbott.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that story.
Oh, well, I mean, the premise of your show when you first, I think you called me before I went to, where was it, March or April?
Yeah.
And you were talking about life experiences and different things like that. And I was immediately struck with, and I don't know, I mean, it's very personal to me. 1985, I was a member of the Flint Southwestern baseball team. Our coach was, do you remember him? He was up at Central, Steve Jackson.
Sounds familiar.
He was a longtime coach up at Central, and now he's currently head coach at Saginaw Valley. So he was our coach at Flint Southwestern. It was April 18th, 1985. It was a real nice weather like we're having right now. We jump on a school bus, a yellow bus, and the Southwestern baseball team travels to Pontiac Central to play. Well, if you think back to 1985, there was a movie called The Breakfast Club about high school, and there was a band called Simple Minds that had the track to it. It was, I'm going to hack it up right now, but Don't You Forget About Me. You ever heard that? Don't you forget about me. So my friend is booming that. We didn't have AirPods. We had a big boom box with cassette tapes that was playing Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, the hot single from the soundtrack to The Breakfast Club. So we go to Pontiac Central, and they weren't very good. My friend Chad Joslin from Linden, my teammate, pitched the game, and we played doubled headers. So we won the first game. Chad pitched. We would bring a lunch, and in between games, you'd eat your lunch, get some Gatorade or whatever. Chad told me he felt faint, collapsed, and died on the baseball field right next to me after singing Don't You Forget About Me.
No shit.
All the way there. I mean, it's the type of shit that gives me goosebumps. I think about him and that experience every single day. And, the other thing is 1985, I mean, getting your little hot tub time machine, no cell phones. Somebody had to run from the baseball field to a landline up to the high school. They didn't have portable defibrillators. Ultimately, about 10, after he collapsed, the ambulance arrived. In front of both teams, they cut all of his clothes off on the third baseline, shocked him. I heard the death rattle, the last gasp of air coming out of your lungs. It's the creepiest, most unsettling noise you'll ever want to hear. And, at that time, I didn't realize that you lost control of bodily function, so he shit himself, and right on the field. And this was 1985. No woke culture or any of that. They scraped him up. No grief counselors. Half hour later, we played the second game and won.
You still played the game?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we went, here we are. I remember that we were driving from Pontiac Central, and we all thought there was a hope or chance because we were told that he might still be alive. I didn't realize that the death rattle was what it was. I didn't realize when you defecate, that's what it was. So we were in a bus getting ready to go to the hospital. We were met by a police car, and I saw our coach go out there and just put his hands in his face in his hands and start crying. We all lost it. Anyways, so that's that. Other than Steve Jackson, I credit for pulling a bunch of 16, 17-year-old kids that were unsettled by watching death firsthand, and he was basically our counselor. And I mean, I think this shit should be an after-school special. We went 25-5 after that point, won the Saginaw Valley, beat Jimmy Abbott, the one-handed pitcher from Michigan, and won the City of Flint championship and the Saginaw Valley championship. And to this day, those guys on that team are like my closest friend. Do you remember, do you guys know Rico Phillips? He's the African-American firefighter that won the NHL's Willie O'Reef. He was in the Macy's Day Parade. He refs hockey, really instrumental. He was our trainer. He tried to revive Chad on the field.
Wow.
So my teammates from that date and time are like my best friends to this day. And it's when you were telling me your premise of your show, that's what I thought about, because it's after the game, we got a patch with Chad's number on it, number 19. And I still have it. It's framed as I walk out of the door in my house every day, is that number 19 Chad Joslin patch that I wore on my uniform. And my uniform hangs in my office. So I think about that experience. And actually, when I was a high school senior, you have to have good grades and test scores and recommendations and write a personal statement. I wrote about that in a carpe diem, kind of seize the day and make the most of our opportunity. And that's why that patch hangs outside my door or my exit to my home, is life is very precious. And in a fleeting moment, my friend went from alive, to use another simple, alive and kicking by Simple Minds, to Don't You Forget About Me in a matter of that. And every time I hear that song, I think of that. And then every time I go to a funeral or a pallbearer, I pay my respects to somebody, I think about that. My dad passed away recently, and that song means a lot to me because of people that have gone. And I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the intent of the writers, but that's the story.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Jay.
Yeah, it's a little emotional, but yeah, I wrote about that experience for both admission to University of Michigan and Wayne State Law School.
Yeah. How can things like that not change you? And I know I had a close call in October, and again decided to do this show, and the premise you talk about, we just, none of us ever know when we're going to go. I mean, it could be right when I walk out of here, get hit by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
And it gives you some perspective. And
well, people talk about, being giving, loving, and caring. And, but let's be honest, there was a part of me that was like, happy it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's a shitty thing to say, but I mean, you want truth. I mean, when you're sitting there and you watch your friend die, I mean, you look at your closest friends, and I know it's a shitty thing to. I mean, I liked him, but I was glad it wasn't me or my brother who was on the bus, or I was glad that it wasn't my very, very best friend. But then ultimately, my best friend's in second grade overdosed.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's weird how that priority, goes. And
think it gives you a different appreciation for the little things.
Yeah, well, it does. When I'm in an argument with my children, or, my mother frustrates me, or, I get it kind of in the whole schematic of the entire world lets you know what's really important. And I try to take the time to smell the coffee, smell the roses. And I was driving home from a concert last night, stopping on Lake Fenton, taking pictures of the beautiful moon. I think life is awesome, and your friendships and relationships are awesome. And sometimes we get so caught up with the dog eat dog and the treadmill of life that you don't sit there and tell people that you matter, that you love them and care about them. And, I've got grown ass friends that are dudes that hey man, I love you. Back in the day, you'd be under suspicion, and the man card would be surrendered.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you get some extreme clarity in situations like that, and I know that's how it worked for me. I was in the hospital for 5 days. Probably wouldn't have made it through the night if it wasn't for my fiance Amanda. She put a pulse oximeter on me, and my oxygen was down to 77, and I was being a real guy about it, saying, hey, I'm going to drink Gatorade, I'll be fine. And didn't realize it had turned into full-blown pneumonia. And, that night at the hospital, I was absolutely hallucinating. I had conversations I don't remember having, thought I had conversations that I didn't have. And, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I think I'm a pretty good financial advisor. And I remember sitting there wondering, wow, have I done my stuff as good as I thought I did? And is my estate plan in order as good as I think it is? And then it was strange. I just found this extreme clarity about all the things that mattered and all the things that didn't. And, I still, to this day, I try to stop myself whenever I catch myself complaining, even to myself about stupid stuff.
Well, and it's perspective. You stop to think. Sorry, my stomach's grumbling. I don't know if you picked that up on the mics. The Gandy dancer from last night.
Oh yeah.
No, you stop to think about a lot of the issues that we all deal with, and what causes stress and anxiety. I've got my daughter Sophia that freaks out and high anxiety about anything and everything. And I try. The stuff that she worries about is so immaterial and so minor. I'm looking behind you, Nick, at the world. Can you imagine, like people that are in some third world country that don't know where their next meal's coming from, have no housing or no, I hate to be, so the shit we worry about is.
Right. I told my daughter.
People are, the neighbor threw limbs on my side of the fence. Of your $400,000 home.
Exactly.
Right. That's
so
my
true.
daughter's fight over who sits in the front seat. I'm like, I wish just for once I could take you and drop you off in a place where you guys had to fight over food.
Yeah.
You're worried about who's sitting in the front. Give me a break.
Yeah. Perspective.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, no, I appreciate Amanda. She's a good lady.
She is.
I'm glad that you fully recovered. But that's the other thing too. Talking with three dudes here, athletes and big guy. Sometimes dudes in general don't. It's kind of like it reminds me of that Far Side cartoon I saw. Little kids in the back seat with a sign that says, "Help, we're lost, and my dad won't ask for directions." Sometimes, it's good to have someone in your life that can check you and say, "Hey, man, knock the fuck it off. It's not Gatorade. Go get your shit checked out."
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. Well, we've really enjoyed having you on today.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
I have to ask this. Have you ever seen Liar, Liar?
Yes.
You know the part where his secretary says, "She's got you on the phone. He needs your legal advice." And he just grabs the phone and yells, "Stop breaking the law, asshole." Have you ever done that?
Yeah. Well,
You have?
Well,
That's awesome.
Well, no, if we got a little bit of time, basically, what ends up happening is when shit goes south on a case, every client blames you. I had some affluent woman that had a case in Rochester Hills, and she looks at me and she goes, and we're there for a pretrial of a case, and I already met with her. I already told her what she was going to do, that what her bond conditions, what the terms of her bond, what her probationary terms. She looks at me and she goes, "Are they going to test me?" And I went, "Yeah, probably." "Oh, because I did heroin last night."
Fucking really?
Yeah, and then she's fucking mad at me for like, "How come you didn't tell me I couldn't do heroin?" Or "How come you couldn't tell me I couldn't have sex with 10-year-olds?
Oh, man.
It's almost to the point now where when I meet with people, I tell them that little anecdote, and I'm like, "Look, don't break the law." Yes.
Right, yeah.
But the other thing is, yes, the movies do emulate things, and I will neither confirm or deny whether I've done Super Troopers in court before. When the court calls my case, I have been rumored to have said, "Meow, Judge Jay Clothier on behalf of the defendant. We're ready right meow."
They're like, oh God.
There was one time I actually was, I'll just say it. I was in Clarkston Court on Zoom. I told the judge and all the personnel I was going to meow on the record.
Mm-hmm.
I did it, and none of them caught it. I did it like 4 times.
Really? Wow.
Oh man.
But that's not why. It was it was a traffic ticket. I wasn't fucking up or doing anything that was going to jeopardize anything. But when you have a lot of stress and anxiety, I think humor and keeping perspective and enjoying it is important. And yes, I have had a few good men moment where
Yelling back and forth in the courtroom
and eliciting cross-examination, getting somebody winning the case based on a direct line of question and sensing that there was blood in the water and knowing, picking up on nonverbal, picking up on context and picking up on answers and going after it and getting it.
That would be exciting.
But thank you much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. We've got your links for the show notes. Where can people find you?
Well, my office number is 810-767-24 0024. And if you're dyslexic, my private line is 0042, so that works too. But I have the website, the letter U, letter R, not guilty, email JAYCLOTHIER at the letter U, letter R, NOTGUILTY.com.
Thanks, Jay. We've enjoyed it.
Well, thanks to your whole production crew, and appreciate it. I like I like your setup here in this. This is real nice. As a lawyer, I'm sitting in a speakeasy with prohibition signs and wine barrels, talking about the 18th and 21st Amendment before the show started.
It works well.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.